what was your thought process when you, I guess, entered the draft, and then and that was, that was coming?
Well, I mean, I'll give you context through college. So,
Please.
yes, going to Stanford, the hope and the dream was to eventually make it to the NFL, right? But honestly, that was so far removed from my mind because I knew there was no chance of me getting to the NFL if I didn't take care of business right then and there. So I had to stay as present as I possibly could, right? And there were so many struggles along the way. First and foremost, I'm a black kid from the South going to Stanford University now, right? So all of that I had to deal with, and it wasn't a smooth transition by any means. So I struggled, right, as any kid would. Then I struggled in the locker room. I struggled trying to get on the field. I struggled with focusing. I struggled with all of the things that would allow me to play on the football field. So I didn't play. And then even in my junior year, I didn't play. So in junior year is a year where you like that's when you got to get the film for then scouts to come, and then they come back your senior year to see the evolution, right? So I didn't have any of that.
You didn't play all of junior year?
Nope. I played like 3 snaps in the bowl game.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So where is your mind at that point?
Beautiful question. So, during that time I was struggling. So I called my mom and I was like, we got to do whatever we got to do for me to still go here, Stanford, but I can't play football anymore. Cause I was done. I was at that level. I was done. But there was no way. Like I was on a football scholarship. So if I wasn't playing football, I wasn't going to be able to go. Right. So that was a really, really hard time, but ended up staying, obviously. And then so at the end of my junior year, going into the off season, my mindset was, fuck it. I'm just going to focus on me, focus on doing what I can. Don't worry about what the coaches say, what they, like none of that bullshit anymore. I'm just going to focus on me and be the best version of me that I can. And I had a good mentor. He's actually the same age as me, Ryan Whalen. He was a receiver in our room. And he just had the right mindset. He was just so focused on his craft. And so I just started following him a little bit. And then I took lessons from him and I started applying it to my own routine, So I just focused on myself. And I said, regardless of what happens this next year, I'm going to give myself an opportunity I'm going to prepare myself for an opportunity if it arises, right? The very first game my senior year, Chris Owusu and Ryan Whalen were both injured. And so I got the start. I scored 2 touchdowns, had over 100 yards, and never looked back. But it was late, right? I tell my brother this all the time, like you got to make do with what you have while you have it, because if you don't, sometimes it can be too late. Fortunately enough for me, it wasn't too late. I didn't get drafted, right? So I didn't have enough film, enough clout to then get drafted, but at least somebody was noticing me as an undrafted player. So the Seattle Seahawks, which the reason why they were interested is because they were studying Sherm, right?
Wow.
They drafted Sherm.
I had no idea.
When Sherm got there, he was telling them, hey, you need to look at this guy. So then, the draft had ended. I didn't get drafted. They called me and said, hey, we would, after the lockout was ended, said, hey, we would like to bring you in. And I had to go.
Holy shit. Wow. So he truly is just a homie on all fronts.
Yeah, that's my brother.
Do you guys belong in the top 100? Does Doug belong?
Oh, Doug definitely belongs. I mean, if they missed him on the Pro Bowl, so I'm guessing they missed him on the top 100. It's just unfortunate.
You talk about the lockout happened. So first of all, entering the draft and then not getting drafted. Yeah. Do you feel like, to me, self-assured, strong-willed. So is it all right, that's just another hurdle, or is it like another okay, that's that?
No, yeah, it was okay. Well, I guess that's the end of that. So I started looking for jobs.
Shut up.
Yeah,
Where?
So one of my best friends at the time.
Jamba Juice. I know your secret menu real well.
I'd have gained too much weight.
Yeah.
So Dropbox was just coming on the scene at that time, and I had a friend who was working there, and so I interviewed with them, and I basically told the guys look, I'm gonna try to go to the NFL. So when the lockout ends, if I get a call, I'm gonna go, but I need something to fall back on. And so the guy told me, and I think it was their it was an executive at the time. I don't want to say it was a CEO, but it's pretty high up. And basically told me, he's like, once you figure out the NFL thing, then come back. But and they were a startup at the time, so I understood it. They gotta be smart with their dollars. But yeah, I didn't really have a fallback plan.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I think it was Will Smith who once said, which I really dug. This is pre-slap. If you have a plan B, it distracts from the plan A. I always thought that was dope. That's crazy that you even had that go through your mind where it was like, all right, let me try to figure something else out if this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So you have enough tape. The lockout, people don't realize too, like the draft comes and goes and teams can't talk to you, right?
Yep.
For another, how long?
It wasn't until July. So I forget when the draft was. I forget when the draft is. Period.
Yeah.
But it was late July when I got the call, and I had to make it was a very quick decision. I remember, I think I had a day and a half to make the decision because there was two. It was San Diego or three. There was San Diego, Cleveland Browns, and Seattle. And so I had a day and a half to make the decision, and then I had to pack all my stuff and go. And I remember I packed up my car and headed to Seattle.
Were you so pumped though?
I was.
You had a I'm in the NFL playlist mix CD, fucking all ready to go?
No. It was more so like I got an opportunity. I can't let this go. So when I got there, I was murdering everybody. Anybody who was in my way, you were in my way. So get out of my way. That was the mindset I had because I had to make it. There was no plan B at this time. I had to figure it out.
Yeah, not making this team and being a part of this organization was not an option.
Right.
Well, what was it about? So Pete and John called you?
John actually sent me a handwritten letter basically saying that he thought that I could add value to them in third down, right? They had, I think it was Brandon Stokely had just retired. And so they needed somebody to come in and fill that void. And he thought that I could potentially fill that void. And so obviously that gave me motivation that their GM thought highly enough of me.
Fuck yeah.
Right. So that gave me some confidence to go in there and just be myself.
From the get-go,
Yeah.
I mean, you've talked about this, we've texted about this, just you're a big culture guy, right?
Yeah.
I've heard you preach about that before, getting to know you, and obviously the Seahawks are, I feel like, at the top of the heap when it comes to that and setting the tone for just how things, giving you the best opportunity to be the best you can, right?
Yeah.
Was it instantaneous? I mean, you walked into the VMAC and just being in Seattle, I guess first impressions also, or did you have blinders on because you were like, I just need to put on the pads and make my mark?
Yeah, it was a combination of all of that. I think first and foremost, Pete made it a very safe environment for you just to be yourself, right? Like he's such a warm personality and just very disarming.
That matters, right?
It does. It matters a lot.
At the coaching level?
It matters, especially the head coach, right? If your head coach is setting that precedent, then that means you can just feel free to go in there and be yourself. And, people can nitpick at it because, yes, it allows folks to truly be themselves, which sometimes, they push the boundaries. But I think that's a good thing, right? Because you're not only are you stretching the boundaries of, the framework of the organization, you're also stretching everybody individual boundaries and pushing them to be the best versions of themselves, right? That's what I took away. That was my first impression of Pete. But he's a competitor, right?
So I was just going to say, I've seen him curse. Like he's got a dark side to him.
So the first thing I said to him was like, I think at that point, like we were going to make a bet about USC Stanford.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was talking shit like, we've been whooping your ass the past few years.
Yeah.
You're lucky I'm on your team now, right?
So
like
funny.
that was like, I remember we were in the training room, and that was the first impression I gave to Pete. Like, I'm here to compete. I don't care who you brought in. I don't care who you drafted. I'm here.
Oh, he loves that.
He loved
by the way.
it. He loved it.
Yeah, he loved you
he loved
immediately.
the smile on his face. I remember that.